What's up everyone and welcome back to the World History channel. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button today. Let's get started. 12 characteristics of Marie Curie that show she is one of the most influential women who ever lived. Marie Sklodowska, who went by the name Madame Curie, was born in Warsaw, Poland in 1867. At the time, Poland was a part of Russia. Residents had to follow Russian rules, like not speaking Polish in schools and not being pro-Polish in public. This hurt Curie's family because it prevented her father, a schoolteacher, from getting a good job. Curie's mother's death in 1878, when she was only 10 years old, halted her early home life. Curie's father then put her in a tough school, where she did well in science and math. Before going to college in secret, she worked as a tutor. Marie Curie had a difficult life, but she went on to become one of the first well-known female scientists after moving to France as a young adult. Tragically, one of the most significant women in the history of science gave her life to her work when she died of anemia brought on by a lifetime of radiation exposure. She is the only person to have won the Nobel Prize in two different fields, and she was awarded both of them. Marie Curie was the first woman to win the Nobel Prize in 1903. She shared the honor with her husband Pierre Curie and their co-worker Henri Becquerel for her work in physics, particularly radioactivity. 8 years later, Marie became the only person to win the Nobel Prize in chemistry and physics simultaneously. This time, she was recognized for her work on the discovery of the elements polonium and radium. She credited her late husband Pierre for his assistance, but she received this final Nobel Prize on her own and it was not shared with anyone else. At the Sorbonne, she was the first woman to be a professor of general physics. Marie Curie took over as head of the physics laboratory at the Sorbonne in Paris in 1903, succeeding Pierre, her husband's predecessor. Marie took over Pierre's other position at the Sorbonne as professor of general physics in the Faculty of Sciences after his death in 1906. She was the first woman to hold this position, which is significant given that the majority of women in Europe at the time worked as nurses, performed manual labor on factories or farms, or taught elementary school if they worked at all. Unless you were Marie Curie, professorships were not women's work. She passed away from radiation sickness. Tragically, Marie and Pierre Curie put their work ahead of their health. The Curies did not take any precautions when handling radium because they were unaware of the harmful effects of radiation on health. Marie suffered from health issues brought on by her hazardous work for the last 2 decades of her life, including severe cataracts that nearly rendered her blind. Aplastic anemia, a blood disorder brought on by high radiation exposure, was the cause of her death at the age of 66. In point of fact, the radioactivity in her laboratory was so high that her notebooks from more than a century ago are still regarded as unsafe to handle and are kept in a lead box. Curie was quoted as saying, "Nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood," but there is no evidence that she would have altered her work had she known what would happen. Even though Pierre was only 46 years old and died in an unrelated accident, he also showed signs of severe radiation poisoning. She attended a secret university that accepted women for education. Marie Curie was born and raised in Warsaw, a Polish city that was once part of Russia. Throughout the 1800s, education for women was uncommon everywhere, but it was particularly difficult to obtain in Russia, where the majority of colleges refused to admit women. Curie attended the all-female Gymnasium No. 3, which is a Russian school. There she received a standard lower school education. Even though the school was strict, it had excellent teachers, especially the physics teacher. After graduating from that school, Curie was awarded a gold medal. He then went to the Floating or Flying University, a secret school in Warsaw that was established to circumvent the strict censorship and other requirements imposed by the Russian government. Marie went on to earn a PhD from the University of Paris after relocating to the city and meeting Pierre Curie while studying at the Sorbonne. She lived on bread and tea as a student, and she occasionally fainted from hunger, but nothing would stop her from working. To protest sexism, she turned down a prestigious French honor. Marie Curie began traveling the world after World War I was over to support her scientific studies and her Radium Institute. She was offered the opportunity to meet with President Warren G. as part of her fundraising campaign. Harding, who gave her a gram of radium, estimated to be worth $100,000. The French government offered Curie the French Légion d'honneur medal prior to her visit. Nonetheless, she declined the honor because she was dissatisfied with her inability to join the French Academy of Science because some members refused to vote for a woman. 2 important radioactive elements were discovered by her. Marie Curie made 2 significant radioactive elements early in her scientific career. She called the first one polonium after her home country of Poland. Radium was given the second name. In 1898, both were discovered. Until it became clear that exposure to its radioactivity was harmful to people's health, radium was used on watch dials and became famous for its ability to glow in the dark. She came up with the term radioactivity. Marie Curie and her husband Pierre worked to expand the French physicist Henri Becquerel's discovery. Becquerel worked on uranium because he noticed that it produced X-ray-like energy rays. Marie came up with a theory that uranium's rays were part of the element's atomic structure and constantly came from it, building on his idea. Radioactivity was her new term for this new development. She created a battlefield-applicable mobile X-ray machine. Based on the findings of previous X-ray researchers, Marie Curie developed a novel technology. Curie was able to develop small, portable X-ray machines for use on battlefields during World War I thanks to her knowledge of radioactivity. Little Curies were the names given to these machines, which were driven by military vehicles. She and her husband had a close personal and professional relationship. 1 year after they first met, Marie Curie and Pierre, her husband, tied the knot in 1895. He was 36 years older than her, which made him 8 years older. According to reports, they were close and happy together, and they remained married until his accidental death in 1906 when he was struck by a horse-drawn carriage while walking. Despite the close relationship they shared, neither was romantic. Marie got married in a straightforward blue dress, which she wore for many years while working in the lab. They had 2 daughters and shared a lot of hobbies like cycling and traveling. Marie also had a miscarriage that made her depressed. Despite having a scandalous relationship with a married former student, Paul Langevin, after she became a widow, Marie remained devoted to Pierre throughout their marriage and even after his death. She also wrote a biography of his life titled Pierre Curie. Einstein penned a supportive letter for her. Although Marie Curie's attempt to become a member of the French Academy of Sciences was unsuccessful by 2 votes, she nonetheless contributed significantly to a number of other international organizations. She was a founding member of the League of Nations-affiliated International Commission for Intellectual Cooperation and the IUPAC Commission on Atomic Weights. Because of her work on mobile X-ray machines for the First World War, she was also elected to the French Academy of Medicine. Curie had the honor of meeting a lot of other world-renowned scientists, including Albert Einstein, who encouraged her after she was turned down for membership in the National Academy of Sciences. The Pantheon is home to her ashes. In the late 1700s, the Pantheon was constructed in Paris, France, complete with a dome and columned front facade in the classical style. It doubled as a federal civic building and a church over the centuries. It is now a necropolis, or vault above ground, with the remains of prominent French citizens, typically scientists and intellectuals. After death, you must be chosen to have your ashes placed in the Pantheon. You cannot simply choose to do so. One such person who was chosen is Marie Curie. She was cremated after she passed away in 1934. However, it wasn't until 1995 that her ashes were placed in the Pantheon. She established the Radium Institute to investigate therapeutic applications of radioactive substances. A Marie Curie laboratory opened in Paris, France, in 1909. Curie, the University of Paris, and the Institut Pasteur collaborated to create the Radium Institute, also known as the Institut du Radium. It is a non-profit organization that has 2 locations, one in Paris and one in Warsaw, Poland, Curie's hometown, and is now known as the Institute Curie. Its mission is to discover health-related and therapeutic uses for radioactive materials, the majority of which are used to treat and cure various types of cancer. Marie Sklodowska-Curie, more commonly referred to as Madame Curie, was a woman whose life, accomplishments, and legacy solidify her status as one of the most significant figures in history, not only in the field of science but also as a global symbol of perseverance, intelligence, and social progress. Marie grew up in a society that discriminated against women and Polish culture. She was born in Warsaw, Poland in 1867, during a period of political repression under Russian rule. Her father, a teacher, lost his job because he was pro-Polish, and her mother died when she was just 10 years old. Her early life was difficult. Marie excelled academically despite the oppressive environment, particularly in science and math, and her enthusiasm for learning led her to attend the Flying University, a shadowy institution that offered higher education to women who were otherwise unable to do so. Her life would be defined by this early defiance of societal norms. Marie's intellectual prowess was one of her most striking traits. She not only excelled at the highest levels but also mastered difficult subjects in a field dominated by men. She moved to France, enrolled at the Sorbonne, and she continued her education in difficult circumstances, frequently subsisting on bread and tea and fainting from hunger. Despite this, she refused to give up. She went on to earn PhDs in physics and mathematics, which was a remarkable accomplishment for a woman at the time. Her inventiveness in science was another quality that set her apart. Marie Curie became the first person in history to win 2 Nobel Prizes for her work in chemistry and physics. Her husband Pierre Curie and Henri Becquerel shared the 1903 Nobel Prize in Physics for their work on radioactivity. She was awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1911 for her discoveries of radium and polonium, both of which were named after her beloved Poland. The modern fields of nuclear physics and medicine were founded on these discoveries, which forever altered science. Her unwavering devotion to science reached the point of personal sacrifice. Marie and Pierre worked with radioactive materials unprotected at a time when radiation risks were unknown. Marie died from aplastic anemia, a disease linked to radiation exposure, as a result of this prolonged exposure. Over the course of 2 decades, her health significantly deteriorated, but she never gave up on her research. Even today, her notebooks, which are still too dangerous to touch and are stored in lead-lined boxes, are still radioactive. Her fearless perseverance is demonstrated by this dedication to knowledge despite the risks.